Yachara! How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Biblical Linguist channel. I am Dale, your host, and in today's video, I'm very excited to be commencing Matthew chapter 4. And as always, I hand scribe each passage before I end up reading it off and translating it into English. Ime mathitis tis Hellenikis glosses. All right, I am a student of the Greek language. The bulk of my studies on modern Greek, but then I also do a lot of biblical readings using my favorite Bible reader, the Cross Bible. That's where all my screenshots are derived from. All right, so let's get started. Tota o Isus anichthi istin erimon ipotu pneumatos, pirastine ipotu diavolo. Tota, then, o Isus, Jesus, anichthi, this is a new word for me. Anichthi means he was led up or he was brought up. This occurs very often in narrative Greek, especially with travel. This verb is comprised of two elements. We've got ana, which means up, and ago, meaning to lead or to bring. So anago means to lead up, to bring up, to take up. Anago occurs 23 times. Okay, so he was led up, istin erimon, the wilderness, ipo tu pneumatos, by the Spirit. Ipo, by, tu, the pneumatos, the Spirit. Pirastine, now this one means to be tested. The core verb here being pirazo, to make proof of, or to trial, to subject to trial, to tempt, or maybe to test. So yes, pirastine comes from pirazo, to be tested, to be tried, to be tempted. So the base noun is pira, which is an attempt, a trial, an experience, an experiment, and potu diavolu. All right, by the diavolu. I know you're probably thinking this word probably means like Nancy Pelosi, but this actually means by the devil here. Diavolu. This is actually a cognate. So fairly straightforward. How would I translate this? Then Jesus was led up to the wilderness by the Spirit, and he was tested by the devil, or where he was tested by the devil. Ke nistefsas imeras tesseraconda, ke nictas tesseraconda, isteron epinasen. So ke and nistefsas. Now nistefsas here is an interesting one. It means he fasted, coming from the word nistevo, which means to fast. So this comes from the word ni, being a negation, and estio, meaning to eat. So literally not eat. Ni estio comes together as nistevo. Actually, estio and the English word eat are ancient Indo-European cousins. Nistefsas imeras, days, tesseraconda, 40 days, ke nictas, and nights, 40 nights. Isteron epinasen. So isteron means and then, epinasen means he got hungry. So this word epinasen made me a little confused at first, but it comes from the word pinao, which means to be hungry. I was getting it confused with pino, to drink, in modern Greek, and it's actually also ancient Greek, pino. Now, the difference between pina and pino, pina is hunger, pinao is to be hungry, pino is to drink, and they're actually completely different Indo-European roots altogether. Pinao, to be hungry, originally comes from the idea of deprivation or lack, and pino comes from drinking. So how would I translate this one? And he fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and then he was hungry. Yes, well, obviously, most Americans are hungry if they fast for 20 minutes. 40 days is understandable to be hungry after that. What's kind of interesting is the way the ancient Greek words for numbers are pretty different from the modern ones. So for example, this tesserakoda, in modern Greek, they say sarada for 40. Tessera in modern Greek is 4. So I understood tessera here. And the konda at the end, I guess, got condensed. In modern Greek, the sarada, they dropped the tes from the beginning of that because I guess it was getting confused with tis, which means the, and so they didn't want to, I guess, continue that confusion, so they just dropped the tes, even though to me it's pretty distinct from tis, but you know, whatever. So they dropped the te and they kept the saranda, but then they also eliminated the con. So it's just serada now. And I guess they've done this with the other tens numbers. So 20s ikosi, which, bad example, trianda, for example, I guess would have been in the past triaconda, I guess, probably something like that. For example, I guess would have been in the past triaconda, I guess, probably something like that. The modern Greek word for 50 is peninda. Yeah, so like the ancient Greek pentikonda was 50, now it's peninda. For 60 it was exikonda, now it's exinda. Eptakosia, now it's evdominda. 80 was ovdikonda, now it's ordonda. 90 used to be enenikonda, now it's eninda. I like the modern versions better, they're easier. Probably because I've heard them a bunch so far. The overall pattern transfer, the morphology was the konda dropped the ko and just became the nda. So they just wanted to simplify it, I guess, which is good. I'm on board with that. Actually, don't really like the old way they did it. Number 3. Και προσελθόν πειράζον είπεν αυτό η Υιός ή του Θεού είπε είναι ηλίθιοι ούτι άρτη γεννονται. So this is getting good. Και προσελθόν, so, and came, o πειράζον. Πειράζω means tempter. It occurs 38 times. One who tries, one who subjects to trial, one who is testing. So yes, pirazo means to test, to try, to attempt, to examine. Again, from pira, which we just covered. And we actually have this word show up in English in words like empirical, experiment, experience, and pirate, which is not very obvious, but its original meaning meant one who ventures or attempts to steal. So pirazon, so our word from pirate comes from pirazon, the tempter, the pirate, the stealer. Interesting. Ipen afto, said to him, Ios itu theou, if Ios, son, itu theou, son of God, if you are the son of God. Ipe, say, ina ilithi, say that these stones, uti, these, arti, bread, yenonde, become, from yinome. And yes, yinome is definitely one of the most important words to understand in the New Testament. It means to become, it means to happen, to come into existence, to be created. It's a word that casts a very wide net of meanings, but I liken it to the Spanish verb pasar, which could mean to pass, literally, but it also means to happen. ¿Qué pasó? Like, what's going on, what happened. There's a lot of overlap between the Spanish verb pasar and this yenome. So if you know Spanish, then I'd say you could kind of treat yenome like pasar. How would I translate this? And the tempter came and said to him that if you are the Son of God, then tell these stones to become loaves of bread. The word arti here, the modern Greek word is psomi for bread. Arti is still used in certain contexts, but I believe it is mostly used in terms of a loaf of bread. The English here says loaves of bread, but the Spanish just says, di que estas piedras se hagan pan. So just then tell these stones to become bread. Let's break down arti. Arti usually refers to a loaf, not bread as an abstract substance, right? Artos is a baked loaf. And this is where we get the very common English word artoclasia from, which we all use on a daily basis, obviously. It's normally most children's first word, artoclasia, but artoclasia is a church term, which means the breaking of bread. It is the ritual in which we break bread. Moving on to number 4. O the apokrithis ipen gegrapte uk epa arto monu zisete o anthropos al epipandi rimati ekporevomeno dia stomatos theou. Now, I like this. There's a lot of good words here. O the, but apokritis, he answered, ipen, saying, gegrapte, it is written, from grafo. I really like the way that grafo takes on this form of gegrapte. Let's back up a little bit. Apokritis comes from apokrinome. It means to answer. Krino, to separate, to judge, to decide. So a way to think about it would be judging from this. A judgment in response. In other words, an answer. Yegrapte, it is written. Uk, not. Epi upon. Arto, the bread loaf. Mono, only. Monu means, from monos, means only or alone. Zisete, from zao, to live. A lot of people are named Zoe, which is Greek for life, or animal. And zisete here would mean to live, from zao. Anthropos, man. Al, from allo, but. Epipandi, from every. Rimati, word. Ekporevomeno, that comes out of. Dia, through. Stomatos, mouth. Theou, God. Stomatos. Now, take a step back and let's talk about stomatos for a minute. Stoma. In modern Greek, the word for mouth is stoma. The word for stomach is stomachi. So these are obviously related. Stoma is the beginning of the digestive tract. What's interesting is stomachi originally meant throat or gullet. So stoma is mouth. Achos at the end is a suffix which forms nouns. Literally, a stomach, stomachi, is the part connected to the mouth. Okay, stomachi is stoma, mouth. We think of stomach as being down here, but it actually starts up here. So, fascinating. What's interesting is stomachos can mean anger, irritation, or resentment. And when I think about English, we also use stomach for this concept of like, I can't stomach this. Like, this is so problematic that I cannot stomach something. Like, I can't tolerate it. It's making me nauseous. So it's intrinsically like linked to, when something really makes you upset, your stomach gets upset, right? So it's sort of like that same thing. I want to visit this word ekporevomeno, from ekporevome, means to go out of, to depart from. Now, I've covered this in recent videos. So ek means coming out of. Porevome means to travel, to go, to proceed. And interestingly enough, this is where we get the English word for pore, like your pores in your face. So in other words, it's in an opening, or porous. So how would I translate this one? And Jesus answered the devil that it is written, it is not only by bread that man lives. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of God's mouth. And the modern word for verb is rimata. And last but not least, tota parlamvani afton o diavolos istin agian polin ke estisen afton epitoterigion tu hieru. Kind of tricky. New words at the end here. Tota, then, parlamvani, took. We've covered this lamvano word a lot. Very common. Afton, him. O, the diavolos, devil. Istin, to the. Agian, holy. Polin, city. And polin, obviously, we have this word in English in words that end in polis, like Annapolis. Very common, we're all familiar with it. Ke, and estisen, placed him. Estisen here comes from istimi, occurs 154 times. It means to make, stand, to set, to place. Funnily enough, this is where we might get, so like stand, estisen, decent. Yeah, so estisen is from istimi, he set, he placed, he caused to stand. Esti, he stood. Estisen, he set something. Like in English, stand is to set something upright. And this is where we get the word stand, stable, status, state, statue, system, static from. And I heard in my Italian class years ago that the Italian verb stare, which is also in Spanish estar, to be, yes, this is where that comes from. So in Latin, sto means I stand, stare means to stand. And so this is also where we would get the English word like instance from, like in this instance. So it's definitely deeply permeated a lot of languages. This is a word that has made an impact across a lot of European languages and sunk in very deep. This is really cool to see this here because, like I said, in my Italian course years ago, they said, oh yes, stare, io sto, lui sta, lei sta, stiamo, loro state, loro stanno. It comes from our same word meaning to stand. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like I could ask somebody, are you in good standing with this institution? In other words, are you in a good state of being with this institution? Being. which again, to stand in English literally just means to stand, but it's got like sort of a hidden second meaning, which actually means to be. This is where we see it in the Romance languages pop up in that form, to be. Very interesting. And then this pterigion is a pinnacle, or at the top, from pterigion. It means a little wing or an extremity or an extreme point, like the apex of a building. Doesn't occur very much, pretty rare. Only twice in the New Testament. And then Yeru from Yeron, which means temple or sanctuary. Now this probably has an interesting etymology. So Yeros means sacred or holy. Yeron is the sacred place or the temple. And if you wanted to put the hard H, like in Erasmian pronunciation, it would be hieron. Now, this does trickle into English in words like hierarchy, hieroglyph, a sacred carving, hierarchy, like a sacred order or rule, hieratic, which means priestly style, all from the idea of sacredness. So Ieru, think of it, put the H in front of it, Hieru, hierarchy, hieroglyph. Fascinating. So how would I translate this one? Then the devil took him to the holy city and stood him atop the top of the temple, or the apex of the temple, or as the English translation here says, the pinnacle of the temple. Interesting. All right, so that will do it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this one was clear. A few new words here, not too many. Had a few curveballs today. I liked it. So anyways, as always, I appreciate your viewership and coming along with me on this journey. I am loving the Greek. I'm addicted to it. It's all I want to do. Now I've given up on all my other passions for the most part. My other passions have become chores relative to the Greek. This Greek is just amazing. I want to become a master of it. I want to form a very comprehensive knowledge of it. I think it's a worthy endeavor. Oddly enough, the more I study the Greek, even though the Romance languages are in no way related to Greek, I feel like my Romance languages are getting a little sharper too for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I'm working that muscle in my brain that I feel like, I don't know, I have more reachability into my Spanish and Italian that I didn't have before. Could be an optical illusion though, I don't know. But I do feel like my synapses are firing on all cylinders right now. That said, you know, learning a new language, it makes you stronger, but it also does slow you down. There's parts of the day where I feel like I'm not very articulate just for brief moments throughout the day because of how much information's coming in. But that said, you know, once I recover, then I'm like, phew, my brain's on full go mode. You know, it's kind of like when you work out. Yeah, after a workout, you're like weak the next day, but then as you recover, your muscles rebuild, repair, and you're stronger, and you're much more capable after that. And so it's this constant process of prostrating yourself, sort of putting in the hard work, suffering as a result temporarily, but then growing forever afterwards. And I think that is how spirituality works as well. I think suffering is a blessing. I think suffering, it can be a gift, but you have to grow from it. You can't let it defeat you, sort of a thing. You have to keep going at it, even though you're getting defeated and it's arduous and difficult. In no way is this an easy endeavor. As I proceed on with it, I'm just more and more addicted to it. Like, Greek is so freaking cool. What a sin our academic institutions decided to drop Greek in lieu of more useful languages like Spanish and Italian and German, and as if Greece is, you know, no longer relevant. I think it's still very relevant. And one thing that's sort of encouraging to me recently is just seeing the resurgence. There's so many Greek channels on YouTube pushing content out. My algorithm's feeding me with more and more, and it's out there. And I think there is a resurgence. I think there's a revitalization in the works, and I'm happy to see it. I'd very much like to be part of that revitalization, because I do not think it's a language that deserves to just fall by the wayside at all. I think it deserves actually spotlights all over it, for sure. I mean, the contributions of this language to the world are immeasurable at this point. I'm just starting to get a grasp of how deeply it's permeated our culture. And now it's like, you know, we treat it like it never existed, but no, this is crazy stuff. Anyways, I'm having a good time. Thank you guys for joining along on the journey. Anyways, I'm Dale of the Biblical Linguist channel. End of transmission.